Well, the history of development is quite striking, as I said. I want to say a bit more about it. Basically, between 1870 and 1950, GDP per capita in Western Europe, North America, Australia and Japan rose by about 1% a year. So we have an 80-year period of 1% GDP per capita rise. Nothing like that ever happened before in history. What then happened in the next 50 years was quite astonishing. The same countries experienced another rise of 2% per year, year on year. Again, if it's been studied in 1950 and asked what was the future of the world going to be, it would probably think stasis. But no, it was even greater development. Again, completely unprecedented and brought about great benefits for the great majority of people. Now, it's important to remember that it's not that poor countries have become poor. It's that poor countries haven't gone through this process. Those places in Africa and Asia that remain poor simply haven't had the process of capitalism. It hasn't.
Oh, yes, they are.
What has happened in the past quarter of a century is that some countries have experienced growth. So between 1980 and 2000, the combined GDP of the 9 Asian economies rose by 170%. Again, quite unprecedented, quite amazing. Nothing's like that happened before. So the 9 Asian countries, leading Asian economies, their GDP rose by a combined 170%. And today, many of those places are richer than we are. So the GDP per capita of Singapore, for example, is now $49,000, whereas in the UK it's about $32,000. Now there's something very important and counterintuitive going on here, and that's that those countries with more people, the places with more population, have got wealthier. So billions and billions of people have been brought into wealth in the last 30 years. And as a consequence, there's even more to go round. Now what this should alert us to is that wealth isn't a fixed cake that gets divided up in different ways. Wealth is something that's created. It's something that actually is created by people. So in a sense, people are the ultimate resource. The more people you have, the more wealth you have. People create wealth. It's not a case of dividing up a fixed cake. It's a case of how big can you bake your cake. And the more people you have, the bigger you can bake the cake. But if we look a bit further at these figures, we can probably learn a bit more about what's going on. And here's some further data. This is from the Survey of Economic Freedom. Basically, it's a survey done by an American think tank and I think also the Wall Street Journal. And they measure the economic freedom in different countries. And then they compare that freedom against the GDP per capita as the best measure of prosperity. And again, it's hard to see, I'm sorry, because that's quite a small screen. But you can see there that the countries that are just to be free, their average GDP per capita is $40,000 a year. Those are mostly free, it's about $33,000, that would be the UK. And then moderately free is about $15,000. And the less economic freedom you have, the lower your GDP per capita. There's a very clear correlation. Again, you can't say anything more than that, of course. But there's a very clear correlation between economic freedom and prosperity. The more economic freedom you have, the more prosperous a country is. Well, why should this be the case? How do we explain this sort of economic development? Well, I want to argue that there's 3 basic reasons, 3 basic causes of prosperity. One is, as I just mentioned, an institutional framework of secure property rights, the rule of law and sound money. If you don't have those things, you won't get rich, you won't have prosperity. The second one is an advanced division of labour. Again, I think that implies subjective valuations and it applies trade. I'll say a bit more about that in a second. And thirdly, I believe you need a functioning price mechanism. Again, I'll talk about that in a second. So I'm going to illustrate this part of the talk with a picture there of 2 capitalists. As you can see, they're evil people who are going to exploit lots of their fellow men and women. Well, the first of these prerequisites, property rights, the rule of law and sound money, hopefully it's relatively self-explanatory. I'm happy to talk about it, but hopefully it's self-explanatory. So for reasons of time, I'll pass over that. The second one then is an advanced division of labour. Now, I hope we all realise that the division of labour is when clearly people do different tasks, they specialise in different things. Now, the classic example of this is still Adam Smith's description of the pin factory. Now, in a pin factory, Smith argued that one skilled working individual, one person working on their own, could produce about 20 pins a day. However, if you have 10 people, and men in his day, 10 men, who work on 2 or 3 specialist tasks, the people in that pin factory can produce 48,000 pins a day. So you have a huge increase in what can be produced if you specialise. So each worker, therefore, can be said to produce 4,800 pins a day. Now, when you apply that principle throughout society, you can probably realise that the efficiency gains are enormous. If everybody's suddenly increasing their output by almost 1,000 times, it's like 4,000 times, clearly you've got enormous capacity for wealth generation. Now, the important point about the division of labour is it also implies the division of knowledge. So as people start to do more specialised tasks, they start to know less about each other. They start to know less about what other people need, what other people want, what other people's values are, and what work they do. Now that raises the question, how do we coordinate all those people? How do we coordinate millions of people doing very different things, living very different lives, in specialised enterprises? Well, one way perhaps might be to have lots of committees discussing what to produce, how to produce it, and at what price. I think that creates lots of problems, not least the huge bureaucratisation of society. An alternative way might be to use some sort of mechanism. And the mechanism that capitalism uses is the price mechanism. So prices provide information about the relative value of different goods and services. So if you have prices that can tell you that a tin of baked beans, for example, is worth more than a carrot. Without prices, it's actually very hard to know the relative value of different goods and services. Now, it's important to note that those prices have to be determined by supply and demand in the marketplace. If somebody just allocates prices to different goods and services, there's no way of knowing those are the right prices. There's no way of knowing those prices reflect people's actual values. Now, prices are not simply, therefore, a rather efficient means of discovering or communicating information that's already out there. Rather, the information that prices communicate isn't accessible by any other means. Because often it's only in the act of choosing, only when we decide to buy a good, that we can actually realise how much we value it. And it's only when we have to make a trade-off between different goods and services that we reveal our preference, and therefore the price reflects that preference. So in the absence of the price mechanism, some of the information that prices communicate wouldn't exist. Some of it could not be discovered, and some of it could not be communicated. That bit is tacit. So the price mechanism then shouldn't be understood as like a huge computer calculating lots of equations. That's not what the price mechanism is like, because there aren't lots of objective equations out there. All there are people's subjective preferences, and those preferences can't be computed. They can only be revealed when people actually make choices. So we should understand the price mechanism then as a way in which people engage in intersubjective learning, a way in which people learn about the needs, values and preferences of other people. And in that sense, they then respond to those needs, values and preferences. So if we want to put our service at other people, we need to respond to prices. We need to say, where is the greatest profit opportunity? Well, that logically is where the greatest need is, or the greatest demand. Happy to make that distinction. And then we can put ourselves at the services of other people by responding to those prices. The second thing quickly that prices also do is they provide information